All right. So we are live. You should be able to see my Illustrator screen. I'll unfreeze my projector here in just a second. There we go. Okay, let's go through our agenda real quick. That is also posted on your guys' thread, so you have access to this as well. But I'll walk you through each of these. This seating chart goes until April 5th. You guys, as a reminder, you got to message me things you want me to consider, because if you just tell me, I will forget. And I'll do my best to get those possible. Remember, they're not guarantees, but they are considerations. So in the future, after break or right when we go into break, you can let me know, because coming outside of spring break, you'll have a new spot. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on some advanced shape creations today. The last little bit of info on your guys's animal projects thus far, and then you'll have some work time. Tomorrow, we're going to do a little, we're going to try a new version of the critique activity where you guys are peer reviewing each other's works, as well as really looking critically at your own work, seeing what you could change, what you like, what you could improve on, right? Little things like that. If you look at the thread as well, I forgot to put this in the agenda officially, but if we go to P1 graphic design here, right? There's 2 replies already. The first reply is the image of your seating chart, in case you're curious about where you're at. But there's also this graphic design shirt size form. So before you leave today, please fill out this Google form so I can make an order for your t-shirts. Hi, good morning. You are next to Amir, raise your hand. Okay, you're over there, and then Aiden is in the empty spot. I think, Brody, you're on Selena's side. Let me see. You can double check real quick. Yeah, you're next to Isabel. My bad. Okay, so please fill out this shirt sizes form. Yeah, you guys will need to re-sign into your Adobes and your OneDrives before we start going too crazy. It should have stayed connected to your account, like your login account. I don't know why I didn't do that, but once you finish that, don't forget to do this before the end of the day so I can make the order for the t-shirts. If you want to do a t-shirt, you're not required to, but it's covered by your class fee, so you don't have to pay anything extra. And then I'll pause the Zoom room for a second to make sure everybody's able to get logged into their illustrators and their OneDrives and all that fun stuff. Okay. So real quick, while you guys are just generally sort of, I think this was our classes, right? Yeah, this one makes sense. Okay. Let's get rid of some of these guys. Move my tools around a little bit here. All right. So I know some of you are still syncing your stuff, but I can help you get caught up with that during the work time. In the meantime, I do want to show you some of the other tools I had focused on today, namely the Pathfinder and the Shape Builder tools. Still going down that road of like, how can I take these geometric shapes and can I turn them into something more organic to fit into my animal shape already? I do want to say, though, I am super impressed at your guys' work so far. These are looking amazing. I'm really, really excited to see your guys' final products. So I'm glad you guys are having fun with this or taking it seriously. I appreciate it very much. So this is the last just little bit that I want to show you. And that's going to be your Pathfinder. And I'm actually going to pan away completely from my work so far, because I just want to give you a demonstration of how the Pathfinder tool really works. So if you remember back to the mountain logo, anytime a tutorial online or a walkthrough, or I mention a tool that you can't see, or you accidentally lose like your layers panel, or you can't find your brushes cup, or like whatever, all of that lives in the window box right at the top here. It's all in alphabetical order. It says every tool that Illustrator has available to it. We're going to go pull up the Nope, that's not what I want. That's pattern options. We're going to pull up the Pathfinder right here. It is the first P letter. And there's a bunch of buttons. When you click on that, it might come out attached to your like toolbar like this, or it might be free floating more like this. Let me not make this so it looks like that. There we go. Okay, so the Pathfinder tool has a variety of shape modes as well as pathfinders, multiple. These things are going to influence the way that overlapping shapes interact with each other. And I'll just give you a demo of each of them real quick. There's also a demo in Mr. Hendrix's video if you want to see a different way of doing that, but they do the same things, right? Start with this first one, which is unite. If I have two separate shapes here, stick with, I like orange and blue is probably my favorite color combination. Okay, if I have two different shapes here, we'll just keep these off to the side so I can come back and reference them later. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so we have two shapes here with two separate sets of properties. Let me just put those to the side. Okay, two shapes here with two separate sets of properties. The blue one is in front because it came after the orange one. And if I highlight both of them by clicking and dragging, you can see there's a bounding box around both of them. You guys see this kind of X-ray that happens right through here where you can see the shape of the square beneath the circle? This is where these two paths are intersecting or overlapping. And that's a big thing with the Pathfinder tool, is it finds new paths based on how these other paths interact with one another. So the first one, unite, is going to take the properties of the top shape, or whatever shape is newest, and apply it to the entire thing and create this new complex shape, like this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's like a keyhole or something, right? Whatever you combine your shapes with, unite is going to merge them together into one singular shape that takes the properties of the top one. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z to undo that a couple times. Actually, we'll just do this. We'll put a little text underneath so you can know which tool is which after each one. Okay, so this is the unite tool. We'll put it underneath that. All right, so if I grab another set of overlapping paths, they're not grouped together, so I have to select both of them every time. Click and drag over, we're seeing that X-ray. Next one is minus front, which is pretty self-explanatory. Whatever shape is in front is going to be subtracted and leave behind a more complex, like where the shape was, it's going to just leave that as a new border on your shape's path. So this is going to be minus front. It does exactly what it sounds like it does. All right. I'm going to just do the minus sign and then front. That's a huge. Why is the space so big? Anyway, minus front. Grab these guys, pull another copy. And you can also experiment ahead of me if you'd like, but I'm going to go step by step on the Pathfinder so you can see how each of them kind of interact with one another. Why did it make it a bullet? All right. Okay, next one. We're still just in this top shape modes category. There's intersect. So right where these, if you imagine this like a Venn diagram, right where these two shapes are intersecting, if I click on that button, it's only going to take what leaves behind. It's kind of like the opposite of minus front. So in theory, I could just fit this circle piece right up in here like a puzzle, because that's where those two paths intersected. But unite, or not unite, intersect is one that I'm using pretty frequently to make some more kind of complicated shapes. But that's like the opposite of minus front. Grab another copy here. What do we got next? Next we have exclude, which is going to be the opposite of intersect. So we'll call this exclude. Highlight these two shapes. You need at least two overlapping paths for this to work. And then click on that exclude button, and it's going to do the opposite while still inheriting the properties, so the stroke and the fill of the top shape of the newest shape. And it's going to leave out the difference instead of the overlap, if that makes sense right here. You'll notice though that if I hover over each of these, they each have their own little highlight when I choose one. It's because with when you kind of slice it like if you were slicing paper, like punching out like decals or something like that, usually it will group these two together. So if you see that there's two separate outlines when you hover over, if you right click on that with your middle finger, or sorry, left click first to select that pair of shapes, and then right click with your middle finger, you can go down here to ungroup. It's kind of in the middle-ish. Ungroup, and that will leave you with two separate paths that you can manipulate if you wanted to. But a lot of the times when you do ones that create two separate paths, they're going to group them together by default. Okay, so these four are the top things called shape modes. I'll move them all kind of in a line like this, or in a group at least. Okay, let's make unite match up with the rest of them. Okay. All right, and then the next step are pathfinders. So these, instead of creating shapes, because these are still technically shapes, even though they're not our typical geometric ideas, like this doesn't have a name, right? Pathfinders underneath are going to be more interested in how the paths are overlapping and interacting, more so than creating shapes. So if we take our same example, let me make another little label. These are shape modes. And it is insanely small. These are all shape modes. Okay. Now, if we look at our Pathfinder portion, it's going to change the way that things interact with one another a little bit. So the first Pathfinder is the one that I'm also using super frequently, is called divide. So if you just click on the button without a set of paths selected, then nothing's going to happen. You need to select at least one or more filled paths here, right? So let me grab some labels. This is divide. When I hover over, or when I select these two shapes right here, it's just make sure your bounding box just has the shapes. It wants to ignore the text if you have text. If I click on divide, it doesn't look like anything happens. Maybe the stroke went away or something like that, but for the most part, it looks pretty much the same. Because what it's done is everywhere that there's a crossover, it's made a sort of slice, dividing these two shapes into three separate kind of cutouts that all fit together like a puzzle piece. So if I left click on this, you see it selects all of them. And then I right click with my middle finger, I can ungroup those, and then I have three separate pieces that have been divided based on the overlap of where the paths connected originally. So I'll just put a little bit of space in between there so you can tell that that's divide. You're basically slicing it up wherever the paths overlap with one another. Okay, next up on Pathfinders is going to be trim. Trim is not one that I use super frequently. It's kind of like the eraser tool where I just don't really understand exactly how it works super well, but I'll still give you a demo so you can see if that's something you want to try. Process is always the same with the Pathfinder and the Shape Builder, or the shape modes on the Pathfinder window. You got to have at least two overlapping paths selected. If I trim them, doesn't really look like anything happens. It behaves super similarly to not unite. One of the shape modes, I think it's exclude. So if I right click to ungroup these, yeah, it's just going to have whatever shape was in front, it's going to trim it off of the back one like this. So we'll just give it a little example of something like that. What happened to my divide? Apparently I didn't copy it. Okay, so that's trim. Takes the front shape off the back shape and keeping the front shape in one piece still. All right, let's see what is next on our pathfinding tools. We have merge. Double click on this. Merge. Okay, merge is going to behave pretty similarly to unite. We click on the merge button. It just creates a single shape, right? Works almost exactly like trim once you ungroup them. But the gist is that it merges them together while also slicing off the difference. So what I find with a lot of the Pathfinder modes is they do kind of the same thing sometimes. So like trim versus merge, they pretty much yield the same results. There's some specific ways that you would use one or the other, but I'm most of the time using divide to kind of slice up my shapes into something a little more interesting. But merge is another option for your Pathfinder tools right here. Okay, we're almost done. We got a couple more. Crop makes sense. Let's see what it does. Hover over those two, click on the crop button. It's going to behave a lot like intersect does, but it's still going to maintain that there still should be both of these shapes, or at least the front shape. The front shape will get left behind. So you can see I can still click on this circle or this ellipse, I mean, and I can resize it however large or small I need. But it's only going to take the difference in between the two. And this one actually works a little bit backwards because it takes the properties, the background color and stroke information of the first shape instead of the second shape. So that is crop. Let's see what's next. Outline. Grab another set here. After this, we'll talk about the shape builder tool real quick. Outline. Process is always the same. Got to at least have two overlapping paths. Click on the button. It just turns them into outlines. Doesn't do much too crazy. It still splits them, so you can still see you have all of these separate paths here. But it just converts them from fills to strokes in essence, and leaves you behind some of these cool kind of like, you could build a cool little like single line design if you felt the need with the outline tool. Okay, let's go down here. Last one is going to be minus back. So behaves exactly like minus front does. Minus back, but in reverse. All right, highlight those two. Click on minus back. It's going to take a chunk or out of the front shape because it deletes the back shape, leaving you only with this kind of Pac-Man sort of situation here. So for reference, the shape modes that I'm using 90% of the time are unite and divide. These other ones are fun and they have specific cases that you might use them, but you'll notice that a lot of them behave in very similar ways. So it's sometimes hard to tell when to use one or the other. Hi, good morning, Jamie. Your new seat is in the agenda. Let me get you that here in just a second. But the gist is divide and intersect or I didn't say intersect, but divide and unite are going to be ones that I use most frequently. So you probably will as well. You're allowed to experiment too. You don't have to just stick with those two. I'm just giving you guys my opinion thus far. Okay, Jamie, let me find your spot real quick. That is Annabelle's. You are in. Here, come here. Okay, you're next to Aaliyah on the back corner. All right, so I'll quickly go over the shape builder tool next, which also has a name that kind of outlines what it does. And then I'll give you an example of when you could use the Pathfinder on your animal project thus far. So the shape builder tool, this thing is the width tool, but it looks like a little like gestures hat to me, like a little clown hat. We're gonna go to the one right underneath that, the shape builder tool. The shortcut for that is Shift M. So this one behaves similarly to the Pathfinder in the way that it creates new shapes out of overlapping existing shapes or paths in your Illustrator document. So if I keep with our same example of this blue square, oh my goodness, excuse me, orange square, blue circle. This is the shape builder tool. Make that a little bit larger. Okay, shape builder tool. There's some behavior that gets changed when you hold the Alt key using the shape builder tool. So if I have it selected and I try to click on it, there's not really going to be anything happening. It's because I have not told Illustrator what to focus on yet. I haven't given it a thing to shape build around. I got to select those so I can see their bounding boxes. Similarly to the direct selection tool. But now once I click the shape builder, you can see when I hover over this, this is another one that you used in the mountain logo. When I hover over this, it gets kind of this like textured grid pattern, and there's a little plus sign next to my cursor, next to my little triangle here. If I click on that, these are going to build these into individual shapes without the need to ungroup them. But you'll notice that if we go back here, since I built this into a shape just by clicking on it, and I built this into a shape just by clicking on it, there's still the information of the blue circle and the orange square overlapping in this little corner space. So if I move these two new shapes off to the side, I'm left with two copies, one of each color, because those two were stacked on top of each other. Illustrator, the way that helped me understand how it works, it's almost like making collages out of paper. Like you're cutting up different pieces of paper, you're laying them over one another. The one you cut most recently is going to be on top, or it's going to be the newest. And that changes the way that things interact with other parts of the whole, right? The other thing you can do with the Shape Builder tool, this is just clicking. Let me add a little note to that. Okay, Shape Builder tool, just clicking. There's also the Shape Builder tool with the Alt key, which we'll go over here in the last little bit. Most of the Adobe products, the Alt key kind of inverts their function. It makes them behave, makes them do the opposite. Once we get into Photoshop, it'll make a lot more visual sense. But holding Alt will make them do kind of the opposite or the inverse of what just clicking on it regularly does. So if I take my Shape Builder tool, right? These are just two separate shapes. Let me put them back so that we have a consistent example here. Select both of them, same way that we did the first time, and then I click on my Shape Builder tool. But if I hold the Alt key, it turns into a minus, turns into a little subtraction sign. Same sort of grid overlay happens on all of the different shapes that I could create based on these two things overlapping one another or intersecting with one another. But if I hold Alt while I click, it's just going to delete that entirely. But I do still have this piece because we didn't cut anything out like we did over on this example. We didn't cut anything out of the square. And now I have this circle that could fit nicely into my square shape if it needed to, right? Let me go back a few steps. Select both of these, take the Shape Builder tool. This is not required for this project. I just want to show you all the tools that you have available to you. So if I hold Alt, I can just remove that whole middle section and be left with two halves like this. So the Alt usually makes it invert its function when you're using it in Illustrator. Okay, so you might be wondering, Mr. Blakeney, this is a ton of information, but how do I apply it to my actual animal, my animal's creation here? This is why I had you guys overlapping shapes, because now you have the tools to combine them together into these more complex, like if I'm looking at these two circles on my bird's head, for example, I don't want those to be two overlapping circles, right? I can adjust these to my heart's content, try to get them as close as possible, but it's still gonna not fill the way that I want it to when it comes time to actually fill it in on my project, right? So if I hold Shift and I click on these two shapes, these two ellipses here, that selects both of them. Then I can take either my Shape Builder tool and then just click and drag. Forgot to show you the click and drag. If you click and drag, it turns it into one solid shape like this, and it will fill in. It will fill in all in one piece. So let's do a quick example of that one more time, just so we have everything covered here. Click plus drag. Okay. So if you take your Shape Builder tool and you have something selected, this is the actual building part of the Shape Builder tool. If you click and drag, you see that little dotted line that comes out of my cursor and it just follows it wherever it goes. When I let go of that, it's going to combine all of the different paths that it kind of overcast along the way into a singular shape. Notice how when I right click, I can't ungroup this because this has become one entire shape here that adjusts as a shape would because we've built it into a solid object here. So for the purposes of your animals, for your shape creatures, you want to start thinking about how you could use the Shape Builder tool to start combining some of these overlapping ellipses and squares and things like that into a more complete shape like this, right? Okay, let's see what else we could do. Let's combine the beak on there too. Almost out of time. I'll wrap this up shortly. Don't have anything selected, so I can hold Shift and click on the head bean that I've created here, and then Shift click on the beak triangle. And then let's see, I could do merge or unite. I mean, my first of my shape modes, and that's going to bring the shape around the edge of my bird into the beak and create this more thorough kind of head section that I could later separate out. Like if I wanted to do this orange piece right here, it would fit a little bit better into my final product. I'm just take my eyedropper tool from earlier this week, fill that in, hold control and hit the bracket key to move it backwards or forwards. Come on. Oh, I've just made a ton of shapes, so I'm just gonna go send to back. There we go. Okay, so then if I go, it's gonna probably not be super visible on your screen. But then when I go to take my reference away, I have a more abstract kind of expression of my creature so far. So again, these are not required for this assignment, but they are cool tools to know about. So you have an awareness of how to use them in the future, and we will definitely be using them more in the future as well. Just as a last quick reminder before I run out of Zoom time and eat up all of your work time, where is the thread? Where'd it go? That's not what I want. Here it is. Okay, so don't forget to fill out, if you go to the replies on Thursday, don't forget to fill out this GD shirt size form. Please do that today. What else was I going to show you? Oh, remember for your final submission, you do need 2 creatures, right? You need your initial shape creature, which is the first one you made, and the additional creature that uses examples of the Pathfinder. You don't have to use the Pathfinder, but shape modes and stuff. You need 2 creatures. Second creature must be created using the shape tools and the other tools that we've covered so far. So you need to turn in something that looks like this. You gotta have 2 creatures. This is this polar bear and I think it's trout in the Arctic water. They both need to be submitted. So you need at least 2 creatures before you submit. Okay, thank you guys for listening. I went a little bit longer than I thought. I apologize. The rest of this time is yours to let me know if you need help. I'll be wandering around. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it.